So get this. Marriage rates are at a 150-year low. Birth rates just hit a record bottom. But young people haven't given up on love. They've given up on the swipe. The grand experiment of two-dimensional dating is over.
So get this, John. Last month in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, hundreds of Gen Zers, singles, showed up to a wrestling speed dating event.
I'm sorry, wrestling?
Yeah, wrestling. Can you believe it? So it's hosted by a social club called Grown Kid. They're known for these slightly ironic, extremely Gen Z-coded events in New York and LA. And the event description literally read, meeting on an app? That's boring. Grabbing dinner? Boring. Wrestling on your first date? Ideal.
They call dinner boring?
Yeah, it's boring. And this event, hundreds of 18 to 24-year-olds agreed. And how it works is that you get a wrestling ticket, you're guaranteed at least one match. But to get to the match, you have to walk up to someone and ask them to join you on the mat, face to face, no profile, no prompt. Just, will you wrestle me?
Libby, that's more vulnerability than most people show on a third date.
I can't believe it. I don't think I could do it. But that's really the point. What's really interesting, John, is everyone's obsessed with this idea of the meet cute right now. 71% of Gen Z say everyone wants one. The coffee shop collision, the eyes across the bookstore moment. That's the story people want, but no one knows how to get it from a dating app. So they're creating the most ridiculous, physical, absurd situations to create this real life connection between two people.
That is super interesting. And wrestling is just the beginning. Libby, weren't we talking about some other examples recently?
Yeah, we were talking about, remember that pitch and pair? So there's this pitch and pair event where you literally pitch your bestie to a room full of strangers via PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
And then in Chicago, there's a cornhole league that doubles as speed dating. In LA, they have chess club for speed dating. And in fact, it's so interesting that 1 in 4 Gen Z and millennials would even hire an Etsy witch to manifest a partner.
And so the modern meet cute is wrestling, cornhole, chess leagues, and witchcraft. I got that right?
Yeah. And the thing about that, right, is none of that involves a dating app. And that's really the story.
So, Libby, we pulled the numbers, and what we found is a full-scale rewiring of how Americans pursue romance. We're calling it the love off-script. Off-script and off-budget. Consider this. 72% of Americans say dating apps have made romance feel more like a transaction. And 77% of singles say it feels less like a love story and more like a marketplace. And Bumble, Libby, has lost 90% of its market value since 2021, while Tinder and Hinge are bleeding subscribers.
Yeah, that is love off script. People aren't just leaving the apps, they're reinventing the entire concept of how you meet someone.
So, Libby, why now? Like, what actually broke? You know, what do you think happened? Was it two things that happened at once, right?
Yeah, we've been talking about this, right? You and I. First is that the apps just have flattened people. And if you think about dating apps for a decade, and really over a decade, they sold us this idea that romance could be optimized. You needed a
Right.
better photo, better prompts, better algorithms. But what they actually built reduced the human being to 2 dimensions, a photo, a split-second judgment, and a really sophisticated filter.
So that's really interesting, Libby, because everything then that makes someone attractive in real life, right? Like the way they laugh, maybe how the way they treat a waiter, like the unexpected things that say like catch you off guard, all that kind of gets lost in that model, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And infinite choice probably makes it worse, right? When you can swipe through hundreds of people in an hour, nobody feels special. It feels like a vending machine. Everybody kind of feels replaceable.
Yeah, it's that paradox of choice that you've taken into the world of love. And then the second thing that happened is that apps started charging for it. And also in the context of today's, tightening economy, Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, Raya, they've all layered on premium tiers, paid boosts, subscriber-only features. So if you want to see who likes you, you have to pay more. If you want your profile to actually show up, you have to pay for a boost. You used to be able to swipe for free, and now you pay for the privilege of being seen. And John, just a little example on this, as I was talking to someone the other day about this, they will
Hmm.
literally go on for an hour and then deactivate their account because they don't want to pay. So it's just this complete gamification of what that world of dating on an app looks like.
But Libby, there's something really different in here, right? Because dating is high pressure enough. But when you have to be thinking about an ROI in the context of it, it really seems to make it to another level. I mean, dating apps seem like they went from a free utility to a monetization machine, right? And
Hmm.
isn't this really, Libby, hurting the people who could afford it the least?
Yeah, the youngest people.
Yeah, they seem to be feeling it the most. So it seems like the product that promised to democratize romance has kind of turned into a slot machine with a subscription fee.
I know. When you say it like that, it makes it sound so sad. What they're choosing instead is the opposite of optimized. It's messy, it's awkward, it's a wrestling match in Greenpoint because those
Mm,
experiences give you the full person, not the profile. And that's where the butterflies actually live, right?
exactly. So Libby, now once you see love off script, it's everywhere.
Yes. I mean, this is an interesting and booming business market. So, especially when you look at physical spaces, we've been in this world of reinventing physical spaces for a while. But in New York,
Mm,
there's a company called the Dinner Table Club, and it was founded by a
hmm
26-year-old and his former roommates. And basically, what they're doing is selling out three-course dinners from $75 to $100 a person. There's no membership fee. You just show
mm.
up, sit down family style, and switch seats between courses to meet new people. You have cocktails to close, and that's it. It's the whole model.
Structured serendipity.
That's right.
And it's not alone, right? I mean,
Hmm.
Libby, we see that and it's not alone. Libby, we see supper clubs across New York are so popular that restaurants are seeing a financial lift from hosting them. And, we were in Texas this week for South by Southwest, and they have big blanket super picnics that bring strangers together on giant blankets. Libby, that's the entire business model.
Hmm.
And you've also seen things like run clubs, hiking clubs, even trash pickup clubs that have become, in essence, new singles bars.
Yes. And there's even a cosmic side to this, John, where there's zodiac inspired dating events. Those events in general are up 21% year over year on Eventbrite. There's apps like Starline that match people based on their astrological compatibility. And we see over half of millennials check someone's sign before agreeing to the first date. And you even have 3 in 10 US adults now consult astrology, tarot, or a fortune teller at least once a year to figure out who they should be dating. But John, here's my favorite one. There's a new bar in Brooklyn that brings people together based on their astrology sign, and you get different discounts based on where Mercury is in retrograde and like how your
No, you're
sign shows
kidding.
up. No, I'm serious. So, you know, it is the age of Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius. So I'm like thinking, I need to go to this bar. I bet I will get a good discount.
No one's going to invite me in. I'm a Scorpio. And they say about us, we're nice until we're not.
Yes.
Um, okay. So I think, for the ones who still want tech involved, I guess what you're really saying is there's a new wave of apps too that are doing something radical, right? Using technology to get people off technology faster. Is that right?
Yes, this isn't just an analog movement. There are a couple examples. Here's one. There's a company called Left Field. It's basically the Pokemon Go of dating. So it pings you when compatible match is physically nearby. So it's technology to get to someone who is nearby. There's also Breeze that blocks all messaging until you agree to meet in person. Then
Mm,
there's Seven, which gives you 7 profiles a night, and then it books a date for you. And then Paloma skips the app entirely, matches by text, and runs in-person date weeks in California. So still using technology, but really using it to get you in person and matching like quickly in person.
That's so interesting, Libby. It's really trying to get you to that in real life moment where you can kind of be yourself and show yourself. And I think that really goes back to a lot of the Harris data that we've been collecting. We've seen there's this confidence gap, right?
Hmm.
73% of Gen Z worry about coming across as an awkward person, and over 60% say fear of rejection stops them from meeting people organically.
Yeah. So what's interesting, John, is they're training to get rejected. A TikToker went viral vowing to get rejected 1,000 times in a year, and thousands of people followed her lead. Young people are just actively seeking out rejection now, which is so interesting to learn how to deal with their feelings. And they're turning to things not only like these TikTok challenges, but also AI coaches to process their feelings. 53% we found in our research of young people have or would use an AI dating coach. And what's interesting is Mino, which was founded by a former Tinder CEO, is running New York City subway ads now that say rejection is hot and there's a bot to help. So basically if you get rejected or before you get rejected, Mino is like helping you work through your feelings so that you don't just stay on your app and you get out there in real life.
I love it. Dating training camp.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, here's why Love Off Script is a right now story. The emotional rejection of apps has been building for years, but now the economics are pouring gasoline on it, right, Libby?
Yeah.
When we look at our data, the average date costs $189. And Gen Z looked at this and they said, absolutely not. They're actually spending, in our Harris Poll survey, $69 a month on dates, a fraction of what older generations are spending. And nearly half of singles say dating just isn't financially worth it anymore. Lastly, nearly half of Americans, 49%, said they'd choose financial success over finding love, while 94% of Gen Z aspire to hit financial independence before 55.
That's just, I just want to take in that data for a moment. I think it feels like a lot. Like there's just so much weighing on your average person about making sure they have some financial stability before they find love. But basically, when you look at that, then you have these three forces colliding. You have the apps that killed the magic. You have apps that jacked up the price. And then you have dates themselves that got too expensive to waste on someone you met through a thumbnail, right? Like it's just not worth it. The ROI isn't there, which means that when people do show up, the stakes are completely different. One date a month maybe, and it better feel like something.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, Libby, that's why an $80 dinner with strangers in Tribeca sells out, right? People are willing to invest, but only in experiences that give them the full human being, not the profile.
Yeah, and it just increases your chances of serendipity. Like who wouldn't want to go to a dinner with 20 to 30 people versus just one person, right? It's just the way we used to do it, right, John?
Yeah, back in the day. Let's talk about what this means for brands. Because if I'm a CMO listening to this, my customers are wrestling for love in Brooklyn and paying $80 to eat with strangers in Tribeca. Where does my brand fit?
Well, I think it's a big opportunity. Last year we talked about that Spanish grocery store that held like basically random dating nights as happy hour within the store. You turn the pineapple upside down and you bump
I
carts.
love that.
So I think any brand that has a physical space can now be in the dating business, right? It's like the supper clubs, the run clubs, even if you really want to get people back into the office, maybe we should talk more about love stories, right? Nearly a third of workers under 44 have started an office romance since going back into the office. So I think if you have physical spaces, you should be thinking about how do we tell these little stories about love, or how do we like make it possible for people to meet serendipitously and create something from it? Maybe a meet cute.
Well, Libby, the data really supports that, right? We found in our Harris research that 61% of Gen Z say they want brands to help them be more socially confident. And that seems like, from what you're saying, an open invitation, right? really not to sell them a product, but to give them context, right? A reason to show up, a permission structure to talk to a stranger, or I guess go do some wrestling. I don't know. It's interesting, right? As you were talking, grown kid didn't sell a product. They gave people a wrestling mat and a reason to make contact.
Yeah. I think it's so big that young people say they want brands to help them to be more socially confident. What an opening that is. It's a space to really not only create physical space and serendipity, but also a rhyme and a reason to talk to people. And that rhyme and reason is often, we talk so much about fandom and community, but that is the rhyme and the reason. That is why we engage as humans, and that's why we fall in love with our partners and all those kinds of things. So I think it's a great place for brands to be. It's in the space of serendipitous connection, community building, but also maybe some meet cutes along the way.
Yeah, and I guess what you're kind of getting at is brand as wingman.
Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting strategy.
Yeah. Maybe
I
not
think
the
the other thing, Libby,
wingman, John, from the past, but yeah. New modern wingman.
Yeah, there it is. Anything else you sort of take away from this, Libby?
I just, again, I sit on that data where your customers are choosing financial stability over romance. So whatever brands and companies can do to lower the cost of dating, lower the cost of those Netflix and chill moments, or just use that space to get people together in a low cost way. I think that's good for people, it's good for brands, and good for society. So I would definitely think about how do you design for that level of serendipity to create kind of magic in the world.
I think that's absolutely right. And the brands that understand this idea we're talking about, love off script, will stop designing for convenience and start designing, for serendipity, right? The question isn't how do we optimize the experience, it's how do we create the conditions for the magic.
I love that. Yes, that's exactly right. So here's what love off script really means. We're watching a generation rebuild the architecture of romance from scratch.
Not because they've given up on love,
but because they've given up on the system that promised to deliver it. The two-dimensional, pay-to-play, swipe-through stranger system.
And what's replacing it? The wrestling matches, the supper clubs, the rejection challenges, the witches.
That's not chaos. That's people demanding that love feel like something again.
Libby, it's the most hopeful thing we've seen in years.
Yes. We should all be gearing up towards more meet cutes in the world.
So remember, love off script. Your customers haven't given up on love. They've given up on the marketplace.
So if you want a dinner party stat from this, think about hundreds of Gen Zers showing up to wrestle each other for love in Brooklyn in a warehouse. And simultaneously, that Bumble has lost 90% of its value since 2021.
But not because people stopped wanting connection.
No, because they finally demanded it to be real.
I'm John Gersma.
I'm Libby Rodney. Thanks for listening to So Get This.
So Get This is a Bumble Media iHeart podcast production. If you're not in the conversation, you're not in the game.